320.
Well, thank you so much for the warm welcome, and what a fantastic crowd. And I got to make sure that I give a shout out to our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, for the opportunity to talk to you, all of you today. Students, friends, political and community leaders, we need your support. Are in a fight of their life to end poverty wages, have access to year-round work, to stop the abuse of workers and the lack of care for University of Minnesota students. How many students do we have out here today? Do you want Lunchables served in the dorms and the kitchens? No. For those of you that live in 17th Avenue dorms, do you know that you have mold in your dorms? Brothers and sisters, students, community leaders, and our political leaders, Teamsters Local 320 represents 1,500 service workers on the University of Minnesota campus. Of those 1,500 service workers, we represent a large population of East African workers, women, and workers of color that live in poverty and work full-time jobs. These workers are truck drivers, custodians, cleaners, ground crews, lab animal attendants in the research laboratories, food service workers. They work in HVAC and among other crafts here at the University of Minnesota. For all of you students out here, or if we have parents in the room, these are the people that are responsible for the students or your students' quality of life on the University of Minnesota. The University of Minnesota is a prized institution and one of the largest universities in the country. On top of that, they're also one of the largest employers in the state of Minnesota and should be leading by example. But instead, I've got some facts for you. We surveyed over 450 University of Minnesota service workers and former service workers. Get this, 62% reported that they could not cover their basic living expenses month to month while employed at the University of Minnesota. 12% during their career with the University of Minnesota reported homelessness while they were an employee at the University of Minnesota. 19% have chose to go hungry at one point or another while working here at the University of Minnesota. They're about 30% staffed right now in food service because they don't pay a living wage and they don't offer year-round full-time work so people can come to work and earn a living with dignity. Because they're short-staffed, they're now outsourcing work. And the people that this work is being outsourced to are coming in and earning a wage greater than Teamster service workers here at the University of Minnesota. Boo is right. Our leaders at the University of Minnesota should be ashamed of themselves that they can't pay a living wage and bring their workforce out of poverty. The Teamsters are working their tails off to negotiate a $20 an hour minimum wage here at the University of Minnesota. And you know what? We need your help so we can lead the way so our students can earn a living wage at the University of Minnesota. Brothers and sisters, students, political and community leaders, we need your support. We thank you for your support. Before you leave here today, don't forget to stop at one of the tables outside and let those workers know that you're willing to help. Thank you.
is Shaniqua Johnson, and I am a University of Minnesota grad. Where my U of M students at? Where my MK students at? Who you with? I said, who you with? Hello, hello. How are you guys doing? Everybody good? Give me some energy. Give me some energy. My name is Shaniqua, and I'm the DFL State Outreach and Inclusion Officer. And I'm here today to introduce a phenomenal leader, a candidate who is running for state representative of House District 65B, and a proud Puerto Rican Latina woman who is paving the way to continue to advocate for some of the folks that you came to see. So who here today came to support the Attorney General, Keith Ellison? I need you to keep that same energy throughout the whole time, but for right now, we're gonna give it up for Maria Issa!
What's good? We're not gonna play the track yet. I said, what's good? Are we here for A.G. Ellison? Are we here for Teal Bernie? I know they had a land acknowledgement, but we're gonna dedicate this to all of the tribal people from this land of the Dakota and Anishinaabe all the way to Borinquen. And we are here in support for folks that are going to fight for our sovereign nations and our tribal nations, whether it's on this land or the next land. This is for solidarity, this is for justice and not charity. Too long. Let's stand up, let's stand up, let's stand up. Little louder, please. Here we go. Yeah. They trying to stop us from marching, yo. They trying to stop us from marching, yo. We said nah. We said nah. We are the image for those who believe. Put your hands up like this, come on. Keeping the vision for those who can see. Come take my hand, follow my lead. On top, let's go, let's go. Time to expand, promise I won't leave. They say drop quick for that dollar bill. Keep the poor and rich, pocketed from oil spills. Give kids tuition for a military drill. Forget what they wishing if it's against your own will. We get them to listen, we won't stand alone still. Attacking the system, flip them like Uma Kill Bill. They say your image is critical when you get political. Maria, sing a verse and chill. But that's not how we feel. Coming like a wild shot to kill. I keep it real with our sassy, classy appeal. What's up in Minnesota? We keep it real. Better set me in my next, I'm picking my deal. Thanks to Minnesota, we ain't breathless. Puerto Rico, Midwestern, it's a blessing. We done with the domestics, no more stressings. Friends come with the successes when they see us collected. We are the image for those who believe. We are. people try to erase. Wanna butcher your craft, set your stars at your chase. Well, we're here still running in the Warriors race. Loisa, dust the table off, the trophy will be placed. Camera lights, action, give you a reaction. Bendición with the drums, get the people dancing. Don't sit with GOP talking plastic. Forget the lawyers trying to kill our passion. Eso, are y'all ready for Attorney General Keith Ellison to win again? Hey, yo, this is the image right here. It looks like us, right here. We are the image for those who believe. The image for those who can see. For those who can see. Come take my hand, follow my lead. Time to expand. I'm from there. You are them. We are the image for those who believe. Can y'all say this? Can y'all say this? Le 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 le. Le 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 le. Let's drop it. This is for the man who does what he does in supporting the laws for justice and for people. That's Keith Ellison. Here we go. Le 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 le. Can you say that? All right. Rumba para votar, rumba. Me enamoré la primera vez que te conocí. Amorcito, cómo me haces sentir. Que en esa vida se tiene que vivir feliz. Yeah. Y eso sin ti no hay. No, eso sin ti no hay. So yo me voy contigo. Porque nada más me importa cuando estoy contigo. Calentamos la noche, candela, me voy contigo. Pa' otro mundo y la luna llena contigo. Me voy contigo, sí. Contigo, sí, contigo. Voy contigo para Cuba. Voy contigo para Santo Domingo. Voy contigo para Panamá. Voy contigo para México lindo. Voy contigo para Honduras. Voy contigo para Guatemala. Voy contigo para Argentina. Voy contigo para Costa Rica. Voy contigo para Venezuela. Voy contigo para El Salvador. Voy contigo para Colombia, Perú, Chile y Ecuador, Bolivia. Voy contigo para Paraguay. Contigo para Uruguay. Voy contigo a Minnesota, Puerto Rico, el mundo entero. Yo me voy, yo me voy, yo me voy. Cuando estoy contigo. Y nada más me importa. Yo me voy, yo me voy. Contigo. Me voy contigo, sí. Here we go. Contigo. Le 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 le. Come on, you event. Le 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 le. Ha ha. Le 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 le. Rumba para votar. Rumba para votar. Rumba para votar. Rumba para gozar. We got one more for you. And we're gonna keep it moving. Can you say vota azul?
Vota azul.
Can you say vota para Keith?
Vota para aquí.
Can you say vota para Maria Isa too?
Vota para María Isa.
Let's go. This is for La Raza. One love, y'all. We can't wait to bring out A.G. Ellison and Senator Bernie Sanders.
Ascendió.
Pa' La Raza. Prima, 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 yeah. Ha. All right, it's gonna go like this. Ready? Let's do a wave, you man. Wah, 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 wah. Me pregunté qué hago. Me for A.G. Ellison. Like Bernie Sanders says, rap on that floor, Maria Issa. You keep rapping. Well, guess what? I'm rapping for y'all, and I'm rapping for the future and for our babies. Para la raza. Black lives matter. Indigenous lives matters. Brown lives matter. Puerto Rico, you matter. We love you. And for them sisters in Iran, we got you. Love.
We ask, at this time, all elected officials and candidates running for office this election, please stand and be recognized. Please, everyone, give a round of applause to our honored elected officials and candidates here today. And now, please welcome to the stage, Minnesota State Auditor, Julie Blaha.
I am so excited to be here, and I'll tell you, having an intro like Maria Issa, yeah, that's the way I wish my day was. Let's hear it again for Maria and how amazing she is. Well, I'm sure you're thinking, wow, we've come to the state auditor. They must really want this to be glamorous and exciting. And that is what I'm here for. I get to oversee $60 billion in local government spending, and I do it with spreadsheets. I do it with examinations, with audits. Hey, any nerds in the room? Let's hear it from you. Seriously, I am talking about that today because we are going to hear incredible, soaring speeches about the amazing work Keith does as the people's lawyer. But you know, soaring rhetoric is not my thing. I get to see Keith doing the boring stuff. I love the boring stuff. Let's hear it for the boring stuff in government. Of course, I use that as a term of affection because I get to see Keith outside of the press conferences, outside of the news. I get to see him advocate for you on Minnesota's State Board of Investment, where we invest over $130 billion to protect the dignity and retirement of our public employees. And let's hear it for everybody who works for government and gets things done. Well, Keith doesn't just make sure that those investments do well, he also makes sure that they do good. Not only do we have one of the highest performing funds in the country, but Keith insists that those investments also improve the environment and advance social justice. Let's talk about using our money right. Best of all, I get to see Keith bring people together. Behind so many of the headlines coming out of the AG's office, there are working groups, there are town halls, there's every kind of gathering that lets Minnesotans like us be part of the specifics of how it gets done. He knows that people in community need to lead on the solutions, and he makes sure we're connected. Let's hear it for people leading in community. You know, for instance, you may have heard that the Attorney General's office joined an historic $26 billion multi-state settlement with pharmaceutical distributors and an opioid manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson. But Keith didn't just stop there. Keith convened Minnesotans across the state to ensure that these resources are not only used effectively, but to build an infrastructure to support recovery that's going to last long after the settlement's paid out. And he remembered to invite the state auditor in to do some oversight. So let's hear remembering the state auditor when you do a new system. So Keith, know this. I am impressed with your great work, but you earned my vote with the boring work. So, okay, so nerds, let's hear it. Who are you voting for AG? Keith! Who are you voting for? Keith. One more time? Keith. Again, thank you. And I am so excited now. Well, let's clap for the auditor for a minute. I'm going to take this. I don't get this every day, so I'm soaking it up. I'm really honored that the next thing I get to do is to introduce one of the rising stars in the Minnesota legislature, a woman who constantly inspires me, one of the most effective and inspiring legislators that we have, Representative Kali Herr. Let's hear it for her.
Holy man, what a turnout for Keith Ellison. Give yourselves a hand of applause. Yes. Auditor Blaha didn't come as her true self because usually she makes math super fun. I did miss a little bit of her speech, so maybe she made it fun for all of you today. But I'm so glad to be in the company of people like Auditor Blaha and Maria Issa. I'm pumped up, guys. So, hello, friends. I'm State Representative and House Majority Whip Kali Vang Her. We are 31 days out from Election Day, so I can't think of anywhere else I would rather be than here talking with all of you about why elections matter and why we need to elect Attorney General Keith Ellison. Back in July, I shared an extremely personal story that was very publicly done. The Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade compelled me to share a painful 25-year-old untold story and the system in place that taught me to feel ashamed of myself and my decision. In my early 20s, I learned that I was pregnant. I was a recent college graduate and newly married, making very little money. My husband and I had hoped to work for a few years, increase our salaries, pay down our school loans, support our families financially, and own a home before having children. But a different plan was in front of us. A few weeks into my pregnancy, I started spotting. I went to see my primary care physician who told me that I had an ectopic pregnancy. I was not provided with any options or what to do. Because I wasn't provided with any information, I ended up at a crisis pregnancy center where I was advised to follow through with the pregnancy. Something inside of me told me to keep searching for options. I found my way to an abortion clinic where medically trained professionals talked me through my situation, what an ectopic pregnancy was, and provided me with options. I sought counsel from numerous faith leaders for guidance. I agonized and wept over the choices in front of me. I eventually came to believe that I needed to end the pregnancy. I carried the guilt of my decision until very recently. The shame one carries because the system we must navigate is intentionally set up so that we cannot share our experience, process with others, or grieve the loss. It took decades for me to completely understand what an ectopic pregnancy was and the risk to my life. Once I was able to reconcile that there was really nothing that I could have done except to end the pregnancy, I still felt incredibly alone because I was carrying this burden by myself. But today, I no longer carry that shame and loneliness. I cannot sit by and allow a system to exist where my two daughters have less rights to their bodies and options for their reproductive care than I did. My ancestors did not fight a secret war and escape communism, only for me to end up in a country that would eventually take away my right to make decisions for my own body. That's right. And I will be damned if I sit by and not fight as hard for the future of all women and people with uteruses. The challenge before us are great, and there is much at risk. Today, we are still fighting for disparities in pay, wealth, health, and income. We won't invest in high quality and affordable childcare. And we ignore the housing crisis and the important role this plays in raising a family. We stack the odds against anyone wanting to start a family, and then when someone says, I cannot bring a child into this world, we now will force them to complete their pregnancy. This is not okay, and it must stop. That's right, we can clap for that to stop. We may not be able to change the Supreme Court decision, but we can do something about it here in Minnesota. We can keep fighting to remove medically unnecessary laws that create barriers to abortion access. We can ensure that women who travel to Minnesota to obtain an abortion have the resources they need. We can protect patients and providers from out-of-state attacks and overreach into our state. The House and Senate have been working hard this election cycle to elect a pro-choice DFL majority. We must hold the House and we must flip the Senate. But our efforts, that's right, we do, we must. But our efforts, they only matter if the laws the legislature enacts are upheld by a strong Attorney General serving as the state's chief legal officer. Attorney General Keith Ellison has repeatedly defended the constitutional right to reproductive freedom and fought the Trump administration's gag rule on Planned Parenthood in court. He also pushed back on the Trump administration's effort to discriminate against women, LGBTQ+ people, and others in the Affordable Care Act and successfully defended the ACA at the Supreme Court. And note that the ACA, this covers women's reproductive health care and ensures that women cannot be charged more for health care just because they are women. That's right. I ask all of you to fight like our future depends on it, because it truly does. We must be relentless. We cannot sit by and watch Keith's GOP opponent, a person who started a crisis pregnancy center in Mankato and served on the board of an anti-choice organization that spreads false information about abortion, mislead Minnesotans into letting him win this seat. I have been following Keith's GOP opponent. He has no plan for Minnesota because he is inexperienced, has never argued a case before a courtroom or prosecuted a single crime. I believe in the power of us and what we can do as a collective. I believe this because I believe in Keith's desire to uphold the law for a fair and equitable Minnesota. I know firsthand the fight he has in him. I hope Keith is all right with me sharing this story, but when Keith and I first met, we actually got into a fight. Like, not a hand-to-hand combat fight, even though I do have a black belt, but sparring. But sparring of words. And what we didn't agree on was how a situation was handled in his office. What I took away from that day was that if you are one of Keith's people, he will protect and defend you vigorously. U of M in Minnesota, we are Keith's people. We will persist and we will persevere. We will not only re-elect Keith Ellison as our Attorney General, but we will also ensure that Governor Tim Walz, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, Auditor Julie Blaha, and Secretary of State Steve Simon are all re-elected. That's right. And I am proud to say that I voted early yesterday, and I urge all of you to go after this rally for two important reasons. One, you will stop getting phone calls and canvassers at your door. I'm one of those people. I call a lot. And two, that you will free up your time to volunteer to get out the vote. Midterm elections always have lower voter turnout. So we need each and every one of you to go talk to your friends and family, make phone calls, knock on doors, drive people to the polls, and translate for those who have language barriers. Thank you all for being in this fight with me. Much love and gratitude for each and every one of you. And on to victory. Ochao. And now it is my great honor to introduce our next speaker, Congressman Jayapal. Representative Jayapal has been a leader on immigration, champion on legislation to address income inequality, and expanding collective bargaining rights for workers. I first met Congresswoman Jayapal in DC my first year in office, where she spoke to newly elected BIPOC leaders. I remember thinking, like, dang, we're pretty much twins. We're both born in Asian countries, we have our MBAs, worked in the public and private sectors, and we both have published books. Well, actually, she's published books. I've just thought about publishing, but pretty much the same, right, guys? So on a serious note, though, she was fierce and unapologetic on that day, and I have been fangirling her ever since then. So please welcome Representative Jayapal.
Minneapolis, hello. How are you? Are you ready to turn out and vote? Are you ready to deliver Minnesota for Democrats and for our friend Keith Ellison? Listen, it is so fabulous to be here, and Representative Herr, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. Isn't she amazing? The leadership shines through, and you should be so proud to have her as your representative. You know, when Keith asked me if I would come to Minnesota and campaign for him, it was just a complete no-brainer. I get to serve as the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus in Congress. And really, one of the main reasons I'm there is because when I got to Congress 6 years ago, it was the night that he who shall not be named was elected, and when I got to Congress, there was Keith Ellison as the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And he said to me pretty soon after I started, you know, you should run for one of the elected positions at the top. You're an organizer. You know what it means to build progressive power in Congress. And I really thought he was crazy. I literally had just gotten to that place. I've been an organizer my whole life for civil rights and immigrant rights, but I did it. And thanks to Keith and his leadership, the Progressive Caucus was already making a stand on so many issues for working people and poor people and folks of color across this country who have been left out of politics. And Keith Ellison is such a driving force behind so many of the great things that were started in Congress. He was an amazing Congress member, and then he said he was going to run for Attorney General, and let me tell you, that drive has never stopped. Keith Ellison has delivered for the people of Minnesota almost $8 million back to people who have been scammed and defrauded. He has stood up for our reproductive rights, and he will never stop. And he will stand up for our democracy. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about, because we are in a dire situation. And I know you've heard this many times, but I'm telling you, I was trapped in the gallery on January 6th. I understand that fascism is at our door, that our freedoms are at stake. You heard Representative Herr's story. I, too, am one of 4 women across the country who has had an abortion. I refuse to let somebody take my freedoms away. Keith Ellison will not let that happen as your Attorney General. He will use his platform to defend reproductive rights. And everything that we are facing in this country, from extreme Republicans, MAGA Republicans, who are unapologetic about wanting to attack Social Security and Medicare, about wanting to take away health care, about wanting to deprive workers of their right to organize and have a better life, about literally making people struggle to survive. While we Democrats, we are about thriving, not just surviving. And I want you to know something. In the times that feel really tough and difficult and glum and gloomy, I want you to know that this time we are running on 2 things. One, we are running on against the terrible platform of the extreme right, for sure. But we are also running on a platform of what Democrats have delivered with the smallest majorities. We have a 4-vote majority in the House of Representatives. We have a 0-vote majority in the Senate. And working together with the Senate and the House, we have delivered shots in arms to people across the country. 70% of Americans are vaccinated now, 2 years later. We have brought unemployment down to the lowest level in over half a century. 10 million jobs have been created in just 2 years. We have finally canceled some student debt, people. And you know what? It's not quite enough, but hell, this is 32 million people across this country who are going to get some debt canceled, and it is a huge move in the right direction. But also, did you see that President Biden also pardoned people with for marijuana possession? We have increased worker organizing. The president himself has had Amazon workers, Starbucks workers in the White House to say workers deserve the right to organize, and that is a platform we can run on. And yes, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and we made the largest investment in taking on climate change in the history of this country. We will bring down carbon emissions in this country to 30, by 2030, we will bring down carbon emissions by 40%, and we're shooting for 50%. We are going to address climate justice. $60 billion we put into environmental justice to take on the most disproportionate burdens on communities that have suffered from climate change. This is just a fraction of what we've been able to do with no margin in the Senate and barely a margin in the House. So imagine what we can do when we re-elect all your state folks that keep the Democratic Party strong in Minnesota, when we re-elect Attorney General Keith Ellison, and when we keep the House and expand the Senate by a couple of votes, we can get the rest of our agenda done. So now this is the organizer part of me before I tell you while I tell you what it's going to take. And you know what it's going to take. We need people out on the doors. Who's been door knocking here in this room? Yes, excellent. Who's been phone banking? All right, some of you. This is a fantastic opportunity for us to tell people what's at stake and why it matters for us. We are on a university campus, and you folks who are here are part of how we lead the world forward. What we do in the United States matters, what we do in the state of Minnesota matters, and what we have to do to make sure that the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota is reelected means you need to get out there, vote, go door knock, go phone bank, get your friends. Let's build some energy and excitement in this last month so that we can reelect my dear friend, Keith Ellison. Are you ready to do that? That's how we won 2 years ago. That's how we're going to win again. Minnesota, it is great to be with you. And now I have the great honor of introducing somebody that you know very well, somebody that represents this district in Congress, somebody that serves as my whip for the Congressional Progressive Caucus. That means she gets everybody in line around our priorities so that we can leverage our power in Congress for working people across this country. And I got to know Ilhan Omar because she was elected to the state legislature the same year I was elected to Congress. And it was a pretty dark night because that was 2016, and you know who was elected at the same time. And so everyone was looking for some bright spots. And so they would come to Ilhan and me and say, hey, here are two women of color, because I also am the first Indian American woman to serve in the United States House of Representatives. And like Ilhan, I'm one of just two. She and I are two of 24 naturalized citizens to serve in the United States Congress. And so we immediately bonded, and we started talking about the path that I was going to take and the path that she would end up taking 2 years later. And when she called me and told me she was going to run for Keith's seat, and we were so sad to lose Keith in Congress, but I cannot imagine a better representative to be in this seat than my friend Ilhan Omar. And I was so proud to be the first member of Congress to endorse her when she ran. And whenever Ilhan asks me to do something, I say yes. So now it is my great honor to introduce somebody that has been a phenomenal representative for you, a great negotiator with me on a number of things that we have fought for in the Progressive Caucus and in Congress, and somebody who really thinks hard about the people that aren't in the room that should have their voices represented. Minneapolis, give it up for Representative Ilhan Omar.
Hello, Minneapolis! Thank you so much, Pramila Chayapal. Thank you so much for visiting us and rallying with us. Who is excited, energized, activated, and ready to win this election? Are you ready to reject election deniers? Are you ready to reject vaccine deniers? Are you ready to reject an extremist party that wants to take us back? Many of you in this room know I am an immigrant, a proud immigrant in this country, and I love this country and the opportunities it has provided for me and my family. But what I find odd is that we have a party that says they love this country. But every single thing they do does not move this country to be great. They are not interested in investing in a great educational system that provides world-class education to our children. We have a guy running for governor who somehow believes that there are schools where there are little boxes where children are using to pee. I don't know what kind of doctor this man is. Somebody should probably revoke his license. Because if you don't believe that children are using the bathroom to pee, if you don't believe that people need vaccination for a COVID that is killing a lot of people, if you do not believe that our state needs to be healthy and whole, you should probably not be practicing medicine. We have a guy running for Attorney General who calls the people's attorney extreme. He thinks it is extreme that Keith Ellison has a task force to make sure there is no wage theft. He thinks Keith is extreme for prosecuting and holding corporations accountable for their greed. He thinks Keith is extreme for holding police officers accountable for killing George Floyd. Now, we all know what is extreme. I believe, and I know you believe, it is extreme to have people running our state that want to bust unions. I think it is extreme to have people who are not going to invest in public education. I think it is extreme for people who think it is okay for over 1 million people, including my father, to die of COVID in a country where we have resources to stop it. And as we watch the brave, incredible young girls in schools in Iran who are standing up to teachers, young women in buses and in public streets who are saying no to the morality police, because there is no morality in trying to oppress women. There is no morality in forcing people to participate in a religion they don't want to. And there is no morality in believing governments are God. So we know the women in Iran are bravely chanting women, life, freedom, for their right to bodily autonomy. So here in the United States, when the right extremists are challenging our bodily autonomy, we have to stand up and say, women, life, freedom. Because I don't want to have an attorney general who is not going to defend my right to choose. Let alone for one that works with a group that is trying to ban abortion in our state. We are not going to have people who abuse trans children in our schools. And we certainly do not want people who say they love American history, but are banning books in our schools so that our children can learn our whole history. Now, everybody has to understand that there are few things Republicans are good at. Just few. They're good at gaslighting us. They're good at fear-mongering. They are good at driving hate. You will hear Republicans talk about crime while they bow down to the criminal former chief in our country. You will hear the Republican leader in Congress talk about rise in crime in the city of Minneapolis when Bakerfield, the city he represents, is top 10 highest homicide rates in the country. You will hear these people talk about vulnerable immigrants who are at our border as invaders when they are just looking for a beacon of hope. Now, Minneapolis, the 5th, we all know that there is a reason Republicans spend so much money and energy here. Because if it is not for our votes, Minnesota would not be led by Democrats. We are the voter engine of Minnesota. So I need all of you to take that seriously. For you to register to vote if you are not registered. For you to sign up for a shift, for 2, for 3, to door knock, to phone bank, text bank. I need every single one of you to commit to reaching out to at least 5 friends, and if you're feeling excited like I am, reach out to 10. Because together, just like we did 4 years ago in electing our incredible Attorney General Keith Ellison, we are going to do it again. When Keith was in Congress, he was known as the people's champion. And now we all know him as the people's attorney.
That is a job he takes seriously in defending our rights every single day, in protecting us from corporate greed and exploitation. And it is an honor of mine to introduce our incredible, amazing Attorney General, Keith Ellison.
How y'all doing out there? Is anybody out there? Let me hear you. Let me hear you. That's all right. That's all right. You know, friends, let me tell you. We got 32 days. Say it with me. How many days? 32. We got 32 days. And I want you to know that 1,500 plus of you guys assembled in this auditorium right here, right now. Look around. You guys are large in number. And we are here to do one single thing, and that is to protect and preserve our democracy. That is what we're here to do. I want you to know, and I don't want you to be confused. Absolutely, we got to win the election. Of course, we got to win the election. We must win the election for all the reasons that Ilhan just shared. But there is more on the line than just one election. What is on the line is whether or not these United States, and starting in Minnesota, will remain a democratic, multiracial society that respects everyone's rights. That's what's on the line. Look, not in my lifetime, not in the lifetime of anybody I know, did they storm the Capitol and wave a Confederate flag all because they wanted to stop a democratic election. Never seen it before. That's a serious thing. Never not since 1973 has anyone had to ask themselves, can I get a safe legal abortion in the United States? How many of you were even around in 1973? I was. Let me tell you, not most of you. So in your life, you have always known that if you needed to end a pregnancy, you could do it safely, you could do it legally. Now, Minnesota is an island. North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin. We are an island of rights, and if we are to remain one, you have got to go do what Ilhan asked you to do and go get 10 more folks. I know she said 5, but she really meant 10. Who's game? Who's game? Who's game? Raise your hand if you do it. Raise your hand if you'll do it. All of us got these things in our pockets, right? I don't know why not every single contact you have should get a message from you, if not a call. Everybody in your family, we have got to do it. There is so much on the line. We have got to not just win this election, but we've got to send a powerful message that Minnesota is about democracy, human rights, and respect and dignity for all. That's what we have got to do, folks. Now, let me tell you, let me tell you, you know, a lot of things that Ilhan said, I mean, everything she said I have to agree with, but I want to just emphasize one thing for sure. This right for people to be able to get a safe legal abortion is so critically important. I just want to tell y'all a quick story about a woman I met just the other day in Rochester. This lady came up to me and she says, Keith, we had already painted the nursery. We painted the nursery. We had already bought a crib and had a mobile that was going to turn around. And we were really happy, but then I got sick. And we had to terminate the pregnancy because the fetus was developing in my fallopian tube. And it put my life at risk. And she looked me in the eye and she clutched my hand and she said to me, will you protect my right to make that choice? I said, absolutely, I will. But I want you to know, my opponent won't. Simple as that. You're going to see a lot of ads and he's going to try to convince you that this race is about who's a nice person and who isn't. This ain't really got much to do about personality. And it's certainly not about mine or his. It's about your rights and the rights of all 5.6 million Minnesotans. That's what's on the line. These Republicans always want to turn it into a personality contest and throw a lot of smear around, when what's really happening is they are trying to side with the biggest, most giant corporations in our society against you, the consumer, the worker, the small business person, the farmer. That's what's really going on. He said he's mad at me. My opponent's really annoyed with me because he says I'm harassing corporations like ExxonMobil. Harassing ExxonMobil? You bet ExxonMobil been harassing us, but they've been price gouging us at the pump. Let me tell y'all, 20 years ago, a great attorney general by the name of Skip Humphrey, give him a hand. Skip Humphrey said to the tobacco companies, you know what, your product causes cancer, but you're running around saying it's not dangerous and it's not harmful, and it is. And he sued them, and he took them to court, and he made them pay and compensate. Today, ExxonMobil, their product is warming up the entire climate, and yet they had a deception campaign where they lied and said that people who said there was climate change were nothing but Chicken Littles. They lied, they deceived, and just like Skip Humphrey hold tobacco accountable, we're going to hold big oil accountable right now. I want you to know. I want you to know. And I also want you to know this too. Does anybody think that President Biden's decision to forgive student loan debt was a good thing? Do you know that there's already Republican attorney generals assembling to try to go to court and block it? Whose side are they on? Whose side are they on? They're not on your side. They're not trying to help you out. But you know I am. We have fought these unfair student loans in court time and time again. We took Navient to court. We took Argosy to court. We took the Minnesota School of Business and Globe College to court, all for student loan fraud and wrongdoing against students. And we're going to keep on doing it. I want you to know, and I also want you to know, that as your attorney general, it's true. Let's talk about crime. They want to talk about crime. One thing you should know, that for 150 years in Minnesota, crime has been investigated and prosecuted at the local level. He's literally promising to stop crime in Minnesota when he does not, as the attorney general, have the legal authority to do so. It is a total bait and switch. But I tell you one thing, counties do call on us to prosecute violent crime, and we do. Never lost a case. But I tell you this. We know what makes for a safe community. And, you know, it takes other things, too. It's about housing. It's about good education. It's about getting these guns off of the streets. And if you're running around talking about crime, but you don't want to talk about guns, then you're having a fake, phony conversation. I want you to know that as your attorney general, we will use our civil tools to hold retailers accountable when they sell guns to known straw purchasers and engage in gun trafficking. We will hold them accountable. I'm not scared of the gun lobby. But one thing I'll tell you is that I have sat with people who have lost loved ones to guns, to suicide, to shootings in the community, to children who have discovered guns and ended up in a tragic shooting incident. And we will not stand around and let this happen. We're going to do something about it. We're going to take them to court. We're going to knock it off. We're going to make them stop. I just want you to know that. So let me just tell you this. Nobody in Minnesota should ever face criminal prosecution for having marijuana. It's ridiculous. It is wrong. It should be legal. I support legalization. My opponent does not. And I want you to know, that as President Biden has taken steps to change marijuana from a Schedule I drug to a Schedule II, that when these Republican attorney generals stand up to stop it, we will stand up. I will stand up to fight back and defend it. You can bet. That's what I want you to know. And now, I want you all to put your hands together for a guy who, this guy can always be found standing up for working people. Always be found standing up for students. When small farmers and mid-sized farmers are trying to make a living and the giant factory farmers are trying to gobble them up and take their livelihood away, they know who is on their side. They know who's on their side. When let me tell you, when the millionaires and the billionaires come knocking, you know who's gonna fight for you. His name is Bernie Sanders!
Thank you. Whoa. Thank you, Minneapolis. And it is an honor for me to be here with Pramila and Ilhan, two of the great leaders in the U.S. Congress. And of course, I am here to make sure that we re-elect as Attorney General one of the great Attorney Generals in this country, Keith Ellison. Now, I know that when midterm elections come and there's not a candidate for president and there's not a lot of media hoopla and there's not a lot of debates, you know, people are saying, is it really that important? Should I go out and vote? Who really cares who gets elected to Congress or Attorney General or whatever? I am here to tell you as strongly as I can that this midterm election is the most important midterm election in the modern history of this country. And it will determine to a very significant degree where this nation goes in the future. So I am here to ask you, to beg you, do everything you can to make sure that Keith, one of the great progressive leaders in this country, is reelected. Now, I think you all know that Keith and I served together. Keith was in the Congress for 12 years, and I was in the Senate. So I got to know Keith pretty well. Let me tell you some of the memories I have of him when he was a congressman. It's easy to sign a bill in Washington. People sign, you know, I'm on this bill, I'm on that bill. And Keith, of course, understood that there is something fundamentally unjust and wrong in our nation when 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Right? You all know what living paycheck to paycheck is about. My family lived paycheck to paycheck, and many of your families live paycheck to paycheck. And what that means, you go out and you work hard, and at the end of the week you got nothing, and maybe you're falling further behind. Maybe I got to go to a same-day lender to pay outrageous interest rates so you could pay your rent or pay a medical bill. Keith understood that. And Keith not only supported a strong, livable minimum wage, Keith was out on the street with workers fighting for that minimum wage. But it's not just love you too. But I want you, I'm going to throw out a lot of stuff at you, probably too much. But the stakes are so high that we have got to do what a lot of folks are not doing, and that is take a hard look at what's going on in America to understand why we need fighters like Keith. This is the richest country in the history of the world. But you know what? Almost all of that wealth is going to the people on top while the middle class continues to decline. Now, I want you to hear this because it ain't going to be on TV, which is owned by large corporate interests. Not going to be discussed in Congress too much. But I want you in your hearts to start thinking about these issues and fight to change them. In America today, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had. In other words, the economy is doing really, really great for the billionaires. Now I want you to hear this, and I want you to put it into your head, and you tell me if this is what America is supposed to be about. You got 3 billionaires who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 92%. And a study just came out this week, and it showed that the corporate CEOs, major corporations, now earn almost 400 times what their employees make. Can you imagine that? 400 times. So these billionaires getting richer and richer, and yet working people are falling further behind, and we've got 600,000 people in America who are homeless. And what Keith Ellison understands, and I understand, and Pramila and Ilhan understand, is that our task together is to create a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just billionaires. And as part of our struggle, what all of us are trying to do is to grow the trade union movement in America. If you're a worker out there, you cannot do it alone. You cannot get a good contract alone. You cannot be treated with dignity alone. You need to be standing with your brothers and sisters and negotiate a fair contract. And on that note, my understanding is that here at the University of Minnesota, they are in negotiation with the Teamsters, and I urge the university to give the Teamsters a fair and decent contract. And when we talk about what's going on in this country, it's not just massive income and wealth inequality. It's not just 600,000 people who are homeless. We are the only, and I want everybody to hear this, we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Now, I understand that Keith's opponent has been calling him extreme. Well, let me tell you what is extreme. Extreme is living in a country where we spend twice as much per capita on health care, $12,000, as do the people of any other country, and yet we have 85 million Americans who are either uninsured or underinsured. That is extreme. What is extreme is the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, which charges us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Now, all over this world, countries understand what is obvious is that the young people are the future of this world and are the future of our country. And if we are going to compete successfully in the global economy, it is a no-brainer to understand that we need the best educated workforce in the world. But right now, in the richest country in the history of the world, where the billionaires are becoming much richer, you got hundreds of thousands, and you know some of them, bright young people who cannot afford to go to college because they don't want to leave school deeply in debt. And then we got another 45 million who, in fact, are struggling with student debt. That is why Keith Ellison and I believe that we've got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. This is not a radical idea. Don't let anybody tell you it is. It exists in countries all over the world. I don't want people coming out of school $50,000 or $100,000 in debt. We need more doctors in this country, more nurses in this country, more teachers in this country. You should not have to go into debt to become a doctor, a nurse, a teacher. We need more carpenters and welders and construction workers. They should not have to go to technical school and leave school deeply in debt. What Keith understands, what you understand, and what I understand, is that we are living in an unprecedentedly difficult moment. I wish I could tell you otherwise. This is a really tough moment in world history and certainly in American history. You turn on the news and you want to, whoop, I got to turn that off. That's too depressing. You know, it's one thing after another. And one of the issues that we're dealing with right now, where Keith was a leader in the House and continues to be a leader, is the issue of climate change. Now, I wish I could tell you that all of what we saw in the last few months, the ahistorical heat wave that we saw in Europe, heat waves in China, the extreme weather disturbances that we see all over this country, the drought in the West Coast, and similar problems all over the world. I wish I could tell you, hey, they're all going to go away. It was a bad year. That's not what the scientists tell us. They tell us that everything being equal, all of the problems we are now experiencing will only get worse. And what Keith understands, and what I know you understand, is that we have got to have the courage to take on the greed of the fossil fuel industry and to tell them as loudly and clearly as we can is their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet and the lives of future generations. Now, again, as I think all of you know who have studied history, real change never comes about easily. Nothing profound is done overnight. The struggle against slavery, against segregation, against discrimination against women, gays, and so forth, all of these struggles took years and years to win. And right now, at this moment, we are engaged in another monumental struggle. You know, as a U.S. Senator, one of the negative aspects of the job is I got to listen to a lot of bad speeches from dishonest people. And I hear many of my Republican colleagues come to the floor of the Senate and they say, we Republicans believe in small government. We believe in getting the government out of your backs, off your backs. We believe that Americans have a right to make decisions by themselves without government interference, except when it comes to the right of a woman to control her own body. And if you think the Supreme Court decision was bad, and it was horrible, you got Republicans now in the Congress who want to take it even further and have a ban on abortion in every state in this country. So when we talk about where we are at, it is a Republican Party which is moving in a very extreme direction. And I honestly never thought that I would say this. Look, I have been in politics for a few years, and I've debated Republicans, and we have our differences. But I never thought that I would have to come before an audience and tell you that, to a significant degree, what this election is not about education or health care or the environment. This election, to a significant degree, is whether or not we preserve the foundations of American democracy. What Trump and many of his allies are doing is perpetrating this big, huge lie that the election was stolen from him. And what that predicate is about, what he is talking about, is how you undermine American democracy. Because if you lose an election and you say, I really didn't lose, it was stolen, then you can't believe in free elections anymore, and that is what they are trying to do. And I know that Keith and I and all of you, we talk about democracy. Our job is to bring more people into the political process, make it easier for people to vote. Say with pride that we have increased the voter turnout, not make it harder for people to participate. And by the way, when we talk about democracy, it is not only Trump and his allies' attacks on elections and election results, it is also about a corrupt campaign finance system. So let me tell you what very few people, I think, will tell you. And that is, right now, you are seeing to an increasing degree the billionaire class controlling not only our economy, but our political process as well. You're seeing these super PACs funded by billionaires putting ad after ad all across this country. And that is why we understand that if we're going to create an economy and a government that works for all, we've got to get billionaire money out of the political process. We've got to overturn Citizens United. Now, I say all of those things just to tell you the kind of incredibly challenging issues that we face. And what I know is that the only way we bring about change is not from the top on down. It's not going to be some 30-second ad that does it. You know how it's going to be done? You're going to have to do it. And especially those of you who are young, going to have to understand, why is it that your generation right now, everything being equal, has a lower standard of living than your parents, despite the huge increase in technology and worker productivity? Why do so few have so much wealth and so much power, while so many have so little? So what we have got to do together, right here in Minnesota, right here in Vermont, we got to stand together. We got to elect fighters. The reason I'm here is because I know that Keith Ellison is one of the strongest progressive fighters in this country. So I'm here today to tell you that we have serious, serious problems. Problems are not going to be overcome tomorrow. And the only way I know that we overcome them is when we bring our people together. Now, Trump and his friends, what they want to do is divide us up by the color of our skin, or where we were born, or our sexual orientation, or whatever. How do they divide us up? That's their goal. And our goal is exactly the opposite. It's bringing all of our people, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay, straight, whatever, all of our people together around an agenda that says we're going to create a nation and a government in which all of our people have a good standard of living. Where all of our people are able to get the education they need regardless of their income. Where all of our people have health care as a human right. Where we end all forms of bigotry in this country. We can do it. We really can do it. We can create that nation. But we can't do it unless we are involved in the political process. So let's get to work. Let's elect Keith. Let's elect other progressives. Let's transform this country. Thank you all very much.